Welcome to How to Draw Textures Part 2. In How to Draw Textures Part 1 we looked at 4 different textures and how to draw them step by step. We also looked at a key list of equipment that you will need for today's tutorial. If you haven't had a chance to watch this tutorial, please go back and revisit it. But you will also find a list of all of the equipment that we will be using in today's tutorial in the links below. For this texture you will need a 2H, HB, 2B and 4B pencil. So let's get started. For the leaf drawing we're going to start with a 2H pencil and draw some simple leaf shapes. You could use a reference image for a more realistic effect, but for this one I'm just going to draw some random leaves. They're going to be overlapping and going in lots of different directions. That is the key to getting a realistic effect. Now take a HB pencil and go over the leaves again, but in a more specific way, picking them out, making sure that they are going in different directions. Taking the 2B pencil and starting to shade the leaves in whilst leaving a line in the centre to add definition. This is important because it gives the leaf shape. Make sure you shade very, very lightly. I'm also going to take some areas and add some gaps. This gives a more realistic effect, but where I have the gaps I will be shading those darker. And if you notice, directly under the leaf, because many of these leaves are overlapping, as the leaf overlaps, I'm also making that slightly darker. That makes it look more realistic and more 3D. Now I've got the 4B pencil, I'm going to pick out some details, pick out some areas, some darker areas for gaps. For the tree bark you will need a 2H, HB, 2B, 4B and the Mono Zero eraser. Firstly you need to shade the whole area lightly with a 2H pencil. You then take a HB pencil and start to build up the lines working in the same direction, as this helps to create a realistic effect. If you have a detail, say for example a knot, then you will need to build that up also, and then you go back over those areas to make the details more 3D. Then take your 2B pencil, build those areas up in between the lines, adding more details to the knot. And then going in and adding more texture to the knot area and varying your pressure and using the point of your pencil more to add details. Now use the 4B to add the really dark areas. I'm starting with the area around the knot because that's the big focal point. Now I'm going to use the mono eraser just to pick out some highlights. I'm going in again with the 4B now that I've picked out those highlights, just to add some more finishing touches with the 4B. For the shell drawing, you will need a 2B, HB, 4B pencil. You will also need a blending stump and you will need a 0 mono eraser. The first thing you will need to do is to take your HB pencil and sketch the lines very lightly where the ridges of your shell are. So just take your pencil, sketch very, very lightly, and it may be that you need to go back and double check them and rub them out. You'll need to make sure that they're evenly spaced. So now I'm going to take my HB pencil and I'm going to shade to the right of each of the ridges to create a 3D effect. So I'm just doing that very lightly with the side of my pencil, and I'm just shading up and down along each of the ridges, and sometimes at the base because that's where the shadow will be. I am working from a reference image, so I'm looking all the time at my reference image to where the shadows would be. I would suggest that if you are able to get a reference image, or even better a shell in front of you, then I would do that just to get an idea of where the shadows are. And you can see I'm going back over those shadows to make them a little bit darker. And then I'm going to use my blending stump and just smooth them out. So now I'm going to go over those lines with the 2B pencil just to give them a bit more definition. And then go over them again with the blending stump just to make them look more 3D. Now, as you can see at the base, there's now some tone. So now to clean that all up, I'm going to use the Mono 0 eraser just to make it look a bit more detailed, just to take some of the fuzziness away from the image. And now with the 4B pencil, I'm going to go across and I'm going to make sure that any marks I make that are on the shell are rounded. If you notice, all of those marks I'm making are rounded marks because I want to give the effect and the illusion of the ridges of the shells. So I'm making rounded marks, and as I go along I'm adding a little bit of shade with my 4B pencil also to each of those ridges, just to make them look a little bit more 3D. For this section, we will work slightly differently. It's going to be very difficult to work within a square for this section, and I would suggest that you use a reference image because you're going to find it very difficult to get all of the tones. I will be using HB pencil for sketching the initial lock of hair, charcoal pencils, a 6B pencil. I will also be using a mono eraser and a blending stump and a paintbrush, a watercolour brush. So I started by making initial lines with the charcoal pencil. I've then gone in with the 6B pencil to add the more detailed lines, especially underneath the lock where you want to get that detail. And I'm starting to blend it with the watercolour brush just to smudge the lines together. I then work back in with the charcoal pencil. So it's about building up layers with the charcoal pencil, and then I've got the harder charcoal pencil. So I start with the softer one and then I go in with the harder one and the 6B pencil. So it's just about initially building up layers. You also should try and make sure that you keep your lines quite long and quite gestural. Next stage is to use the blending stump to smooth out your marks and always be going in the direction of the hair flow. I'm now going to pick out some more lines with my 6B pencil, some darker areas again, going for that area underneath, and some wispy hairs. I'm now going to go with my mono eraser just to pick out some light details. It is very difficult to cover all of the areas of drawing hair in this small section of this tutorial, so I do plan to do this in more detail in a future tutorial. If you found this tutorial useful, then please make sure you go back and check out How to Draw Textures Part 1 if you haven't already, and all of the other drawing and painting tutorials on the channel. You should also make sure that you like and subscribe to be notified of future content, and if you have suggestions for future clips, then please make sure that you leave comments in the sections below. Also, if you are interested in any of the products that have been used in today's tutorial, don't forget to look in the links in the descriptions below, as everything is detailed there.